More on President Obama's comments to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's bring in Middle East expert Matthew Brodsky. He's a former director of policy at the Jewish Policy Center here in Washington, D.C. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thank you.
Do you think now is the right time to get a deal done? And if not now, then when?
Okay, let's be clear that the reason that this is happening right now and that Netanyahu is meeting with President Obama at the White House is the AIPAC conference, which is bringing together between 10,000 to 14,000 supporters of a strong American-Israeli alliance. And that's why he's here now, and he's speaking before that organization. So that is for the timing. Otherwise, yes, it does sound a little bit odd that with everything going on in Syria and Iran, and especially Ukraine, that we're having this type of focus on the matter right now. As far as extending the peace talks, sure, though I'm sure will continue, but he's bringing the pressure to bear on Netanyahu in Israel for a wide variety of bizarre reasons that are not realistic, instead of bringing the pressure to bear on the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, who will not recognize Israel as a Jewish state and still would like to see the return of 4.7 million refugees into Israel, which is basically a non-starter for any negotiations anyways. So the wheels can continue to spin, but that explains what the timing is right now, and there's no reason to get one's hope up in the clouds about this.
But I want to get your input on this timing because he is in town for a conference, but U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has been going to the Middle East. He's been there a record number of times just in the last year. So this has been something that's been going on and on and on. Why not now you have these two leaders in the same room? Can't they work something out?
If the bottom position of the Palestinian Authority was that it would accept an Israeli state that was Jewish next to it, then there would be peace tomorrow. But unfortunately, if the bottom line hasn't changed for the Palestinian Authority since 2008, when they rejected a peace plan brought by Israeli Prime Minister Olmert, if that hasn't changed, then there's not much to discuss. I mean, in a negotiation, there needs to be a sense of compromise. I believe Israel has made that compromise. And if this were just about territory, just about borders, they could have an agreement that would take care of those issues, and it would be roughly 4.6% of territory in the Palestinian Authority that would go to Israel, and Israel would have land swaps, and it would keep really people living in towns in the Palestinian Authority there. It's not a territorial issue, unfortunately. It's about Israel's right to exist. And since that hasn't changed, it's difficult to see how that happens moving forward.
We have about 30 seconds left, so time for one last question. Could the words that Obama has said, Israel could find itself isolated internationally, could that happen? And if so, what then? Well,
it's bizarre that he would say that to the Israeli Prime Minister, that they would be more isolated in the world. There's a campaign to boycott and divest from Israel. It's unfortunately puts the pressure on Israel to make more concessions that it does not need to make, and absolves the Palestinian Authority from grappling with their own mythology. And unfortunately, this is going to be counterproductive, and it doesn't make Israel want to make more concessions. When Israel feels that the international community is behind its back and will help it be secure in a peace deal, then they move forward.
He's really putting himself out there. All right. Matthew Brodsky, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much for your insight.